live on YouTube and hi, everyone. This is Dr. Reverend Tammy Patzer, and this is Expert Profiles. And tonight I have a guest for you. His name is Frank Zakari, and he is the best-selling author of a book that is called Business Secrets for Walking on Water. So, of course, you hear that and immediately you have this image, anyway, I do, of, walking on water. And of course, when you walk on water, that means that you have some superpower. Mm-hmm. So before we get started, Frank, tell me, what is your superpower?
My superpower, we had to change the name of it because I used to do turnarounds of failing companies, and that's what I'm really, really good at. But turnaround offends a lot of people. So now it's relaunch. I relaunch organizations. That's my superpower.
Okay, so this new book, and I understand that it was actually a best-selling hot new release when it came out, and I think that was in what, June or July?
June, yes.
This year?
This year, June 29th, it came out at 6 a.m. and at 3 o'clock it hit bestseller and #1 bestseller. And it stayed #1 for 3 days, which for a relatively new author is like, wow, 3 days, geez, how about that? So it's been very exciting. And I'm so grateful for all the people and the support who have stepped up and bought the book, and the feedback that I'm getting on it's been very, very, very positive. What's really interesting, Tammy, a lot of people ask me, well, how long did it take to write the book? Okay, I said, well, it took 35 years of experience in life to gather the material and the stories. It took less than 90 days to actually write it. And then going through the publishing process, as you know, can take who knows how long. It can take 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 months. But it was a real adventure. I wrote 5 other books earlier in my life, but I didn't know anything about publishing. I didn't know anything about anything. I just wrote the books. And they got good reviews, but they didn't set the world on fire. And so I had stopped for quite a while. Now I had a radio show on called Life Altering Events, which are now movie TV. And I interviewed a woman named Kathleen O'Keefe Cannabis. And she's an award-winning author. And she does a lot of work with dream and dream interpretation. I had her on my radio show twice. And then she called me one day and she says, Frank, you're a really good storyteller. You need to write a book. And I said, geez, Kat, I wrote 5. It didn't go well. She goes, but you didn't have a publisher. So let's rethink this. And we're not going to do 1 book, Frank. We're going to do 3. And this Business Secrets for Walking on Water is the first of a 3-book series. And it came out, and I had a marketing person to help us because it's you got to play the game. So you got to know how to play the game. And I was thrilled that it's gotten the reception that it has. It's blown me away. It's gotten me to meet people like you. I would have never met you had this not occurred.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. When people write a book, like you said, it may have taken you, 90 days to write the book, but it was 35 years of experience. So in this life experience of yours, can you tell me a little bit more about your business experience and what brought you to the point where you have now literally become an expert in this field of helping people turn around their businesses?
Sure. The education and the experience started when I was 20 years old, and I was in the military. And I was lottery number 10. So, if those of you who are old enough to remember the lottery, well, I was lottery number 10. So I enlisted in the Air Force, and I came to California. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. And one of the things that I learned, and it helped me throughout my entire professional career, was I was a young 21-year-old, and I was in charge of the pediatric clinic. All right, that's 90 children a day, various levels of illness, right? 90 kids a day. Well, the more senior people who should have had the job didn't want it, because who wants to deal with 90 crying kids a day? So I said, I'll do it. I'll take it. Now, there was nobody volunteering to come to work at the clinic in the military. Now, the colonel could have said, too bad you're going to go, but he didn't. And he said, Frank, find volunteers. So I went to the Red Cross. And I said, I'm looking for some volunteers to come in and work in the pediatric clinic. Now, they don't have to be there, Tammy, right? They don't have to show up, and they don't have to come back. So now it was, all right, at 21 years old, I have to put a program together where they understand what we're doing. They trust me. We're going to collaborate together. We're going to have their input. And I have to make it such that they want to be there and they have to be enthused about being there, right? And so that's what I did. And we won all kinds of awards during that period of time. Now I got out of the military and finished school, and I got into big corporate America in the high-tech sector. And I was working for a company called NCR, who was in the computers at that point in time. Well, NCR put me in a group, and they said, we want you to go after these multi-million-dollar type contracts. Okay, well, NCR only has equipment. They only had a computer hardware. They didn't have software. They didn't have all the things to put a solution together. So all my military learning was, now I got to go find a software company. I got to go find integrators. I have to go find all these different people, either in or out of the company. And I used to put together tiger teams. And these tiger teams would go and we'd identify an opportunity. Those are the people on the street. We called them the bird dogs. You find the opportunity, you get the bird up in the air, and then we'll bring the team together to go after it and win the deal. So we had expertise in the industry, we had expertise on the application, and very few of them actually were employed by NCR. And I would put these teams together, right? And that was extremely successful. And when I got out of big corporate America, I went and worked for a much smaller company. And they lie to you when you leave big corporate America, go to a little company, they lie to you because it's not publicly traded, right? So you can't see all the financials. So I get there and I knew the owner, and I'm looking at, I started looking at the financials, and I said, you're going to run out of cash in about 8 months. And she said, that's why you're here. And I went, well, it would have been nice for you to tell me beforehand. And she said, you wouldn't have come. And I said, you're right, I wouldn't have come. So we said, all right, well, let's put a plan together. Same thing. What do we need to do? What needs to be adjusted? What do we not need to do anymore? What processes can we be doing better? How do we expand our customer base? Because you're too reliant on one major customer, right? So I put that in place, and we started putting that together. And that company went from, it was small, so it went from 48 to 12 million in 3 years, and then we sold it. Okay. From there, I went with my eyes more wide open when I went to these next opportunities, and I would have a contract signed, either 3 years, 4 years, whatever it was. And we had like a prenup. Okay, if we don't agree for whatever reason, this is the out clause, and this is what you're going to do, all that kind of stuff. And it was so much fun, Candy, because every day you had to use all the skills that you knew. And I'm not an expert in accounting. I'm not an expert in management. I'm not. But I would surround myself, same thing as I did in the military, with people who were way better than I was in their area of expertise. And the first person I always hired was a CFO, because I hate doing accounting. I can't stand it, right? So the first person I hired, I would tell him, you have 2 jobs. First job, keep me out of jail. Second job, don't surprise me. Now, I knew enough about finance so that I could look at it and say, okay, yeah, this makes sense. We're tracking correctly. And every time I took over a company, Tammy, I would meet with all the staff. And I try to meet them. I would do a group meeting, but then I wanted to meet everybody one-on-one. And I would say to them, okay, tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay. Now, the bad and the ugly come out really fast, really fast. And so I'd listen and I'd say, okay, well, now tell me one thing. If you had the power to implement, what would you do? And I'm telling you, and I've said this many times in my talks, it was like the deer in the headlights. Oh my God, no one's ever asked me that before. And I said, well, I'm asking, what would you do and why? So they explained what they thought. And I said, good, do it. And you implement it. And it was like, then you meet 2 kind of people, right? One kind of person is, I don't get paid enough to do that. And the other kind of person is, really? You want, yeah, okay, this is great. and they take off and they start to run with it. And then you start making little adjustments as you go. And that's how you do relaunches, little adjustments. It's baby steps. You're not going to turn it around tomorrow. So what are we doing well? That's great. Now, what can we do better? How can we adjust this? All right. How do we expand the customer base? We were pivoting before pivoting was a term, right? And pivoting was simply, to me, when I talk to a lot of companies, so I'm going to pivot. And I said, well, what do you mean? Well, I'm going to get rid of all this and do something new. That's not pivoting. Usually that's death. But the pivoting was, we're really good at this. And we were using Hewlett-Packard equipment in one case. And I said, get Sun Microsystem equipment. And that would expand dramatically where our sector was. And so then we start adding pieces. And so we start getting bigger and stronger and more financially sound. And the beautiful thing, Tammy, is when I was doing that, the people became enthused again. And they were excited again. And it's so much fun when you're working someplace and you're going through a difficult period and people are excited and they're believing, yeah, we're going to pull this out. This is going to happen. And I was always amazed at how much better everybody became when you, the person in charge, said to them, I believe in you and I trust you. So let's go. Let's put this together. So that's how it all came to pass. Now I got out of the high-tech world when my at a life-altering event, my wife left and I had custody of my children, and they were young at the time. So I couldn't travel. I traveled a great deal in the high-tech world. So I bought an insurance agency so I could be home and be a full-time father, right? And the insurance agency was not a profitable. It just wasn't. And so it was, and I knew nothing about insurance. And they said, best practice, put your office here, 15, 20-mile radius around your office. Those are your customers. Call them in, sell them insurance. And I went, okay, well, it sounds easy. Well, it wasn't easy. It was not easy because the people that I inherited they always paid late. They always wanted the lowest amount of insurance. And I'm wasting all this time doing this administrative nonsense. And I was sitting there one day going, God, I hate this. And a friend of mine who worked for me in the tech world came in and he said, I don't feel any compassion for you, Frank. You turned around so many organizations and now you're in here complaining. And he goes, turn the damn thing around, relaunch it. And I said, yes, I know how to do that. So we changed. We changed. There was a pivot. Yes, we're selling insurance, but we're going to have a target. And our target was going to be only families who had a minimum income of $150,000 at that time. That was 10 years ago, right? They had one house, 2 cars, and children. And my staff all looked at me like, what are you, nuts? And I said, no, why we do what we do is because we're protecting someone's hopes and dreams. How we're going to do it is give them the highest amount of insurance at the fairest price, not the lowest price. You ever see commercials for insurance on TV? It's at 15%. You can do it. Okay, no, we're not going to play that game. That makes you a commodity. That means you have no value. Fair price. And then we're going to give them the best possible service. So when a situation comes up, we're going to be there for them. All right. And this agency that I took over, the most it made was $5,000 in profit in 1 year, 5,000. And in 2 years with that model, and if people didn't fit the model, we weren't going to market to them. Okay. Within 2 years, we made $750,000 in profit. And we were all over the state. I didn't care. I was in California. It didn't matter. I was in Northern California, if you're in San Diego, I'll come to San Diego, I'll come to wherever you are. If you fit the profile, we'll go after that. And that became a big thing. And it was a big part of the book is who do you want as a customer? And I gave a talk at a small business expo 2 weeks ago. And I asked that question and everyone says, well, I want everybody. And I said, no, you don't. You don't want everybody as a customer. Who fits your profile? Who do you want to work with? What kind of sector do you want to be in? And a lot of, wow, I never thought of it. Well, that's the big difference. And that's where a lot of the skill comes in, is to relaunching organizations is let's rethink, what do you do well? What do you like doing? And then let's see how we can take advantage of what's in place currently, right? Then COVID comes along and it just blows everything to pieces. And I saw two types of people in COVID. You probably saw the same. The panicky ones, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. And the ones who said, there might be an opportunity here. Let me look and see what could potentially happen.
Lots of opportunity. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. What did you really see? You just said some people saw it as, oh no, my life is over, and other people are like, oh yay, I can change my life, because people literally were forced to be at home for anywhere from a couple weeks to a couple months, or they were forced to go to work in jobs that maybe need to rethink because they were exposed. So what did you see in all of that?
Well, I saw the same thing you did. There's people, the employee level people, where they're not happy. And then they realized, I wasn't really happy at what I was doing. I commute an hour each way. I work for 10 hours, 12 hours out of a day. I'm doing something I don't get any pleasure from. All right. There have been 3 reports that have come out recently. One was from Prudential Financials, and they said 26% of employees are going to leave. Okay. That was followed up by Forbes, who said 67% of employees intend to leave. And then Monster.com, the job recruiting company, they came out with one recently. 97% of the people given the opportunity are going to leave their job. So what's going on here? All right, people are not happy, they're not satisfied, they don't feel appreciated. Not a good thing. What I tell CEOs is, when this COVID thing came, here's your opportunity to press the reset button. What do we do well? What can we do better? What do we not do well? And let's figure out how to streamline and make what we do better. And I had one person say to me, well, how do I do that? I said, well, you start talking to your employees. If they're closer to the problem than you are, they can give you a lot of good ideas if you open the door up to that. And they may show you, here's a place to pivot. Okay, I'll give you a couple examples. High-end restaurants. COVID killed high-end restaurants. They don't have drive-throughs. They usually don't take out, right? So we met with a few high-end restaurants, and we said, consider this. Everyone who comes to your restaurant pays with a credit card, because no one's carrying $300, $400, $500 in cash for them. And that's what a high-end restaurant you're paying if you have a group. You have their name, you have their address, more than likely, you have a phone number, you probably have an email address. Contact them, call them, email them, whatever, however you can get a hold of them. First off, ask, how are you doing? Are you okay during this issue? All right. Then you say in this note, while you're in this quarantine, we are going to prepare your favorite meals on these days of the week. We're going to do this meal on these days, and send us an email with your order by X. We will prepare it, and then the delivery to your house will be on us. We will pay for the delivery. Okay. And then at the end, you put down when you're able to come back, we look forward to seeing you. Now in California, we had a couple starts and stops. Okay, we're open, we're not, we're open. All right, anyway, when the people came back, that's where they went. They didn't come husband and wife, they came with groups. So there were parties that came, everybody singing the praises of this organization because they cared and they reached out. All right, now for the individual, I'm getting a really good meal. I don't have to eat pizza and tacos and wait for Uber Eats to come an hour and a half to 2 hours late every day for that day. And these people actually care about me. For the restaurant, they brought in revenue stream, and they kept their high-end employees, normally the chefs. So they're able to keep those people, right? And they made such a connection with their customers that these people aren't going to go anywhere. Any major event that they're going to have, that's where they're going to go. That's a pivot. Okay, it's not throwing everything out and starting from scratch. We had another operation, they did a food supplement, and they're dying. They're just floundering. They don't have enough money. The marketing's not well. It's not good. Then COVID comes, right? And so we met with them and we said, okay, look, when people buy your product, what other ones do they buy? And so we did some research and they came, well, here's 2 or 3 other supplements that people normally buy. Well, if you're struggling, they're probably struggling too. So we made contact with them and we said, look, how is everyone doing? What if we took over your marketing? What if we started doing collaborative selling where you get this, and this for X period of dollars? So now your revenue stream is improving. You're not competing with these people. You're complementing each other. And the people don't have to say, well, I'll buy this, but not that. Okay, it's a combined package. All of them had saw an increase in their revenue and their costs dropped dramatically. Just was a dramatic drop in the price because they're all trying to reinvent the wheel because no one understands. Well, now Be Connected people understand it. Social media marketing. How many people really, really understand it and how to make it of value? And so everybody's struggling. And what I was finding out, Tammy, was anybody who could do a website said, I'm a social media marketer. Okay, well, no, you're not. And so there was an awful lot of floundering that was going on. So one of the things we put in the book, and a big piece of this whole thing is, do you know what you don't know? Big question. That's one of the secrets to walking on water. What you know is not as important as who you know. And what you know is not as important as what you don't know. Because what you don't know, what you don't expect, what you're not prepared for, that's what takes you out. So surround yourself, as I said in the beginning, with people who are better than you, or an organization, number one, that's been there before, and that has the depth and the network that they can bring in a series of consultants or a series of experts to get you past whatever your hurdle happens to be. Okay? Let me give you an example. What I mean, I'm a mentor with University of California Entrepreneurship Academy. So the 10 big research universities in California, UCLA, UC Berkeley, you know who they are, right? So I meet with them and they said, Frank, we have trouble going from the laboratory to the marketplace. And I said, okay, what do you mean? Tell me. And they said, we have 19,224 patents and licenses. And I said, wow. So what are you talking to me for? You have 19,224 patents. And they said 65% of our revenue comes from 5. And I said 5%, right? And he goes, no, 5 total patents generate all that money. And so, well, you're a big research operation. Why? Why is that the case? And the first reason they had was no market need. And I said, okay, well, that's a nice way to say you didn't pass the who cares test. Good science. Why are you doing it? Well, if this is really advanced science. Okay, well, you think it's good, but does the world think it's good? Do 5 people like it or do 5 million people like it? And they had 4 other reasons, didn't have enough money, wrong team, etc. And so then I said to them, well, with all due respect, and I always say this, you learn this in the military, you always say with all due respect before you insult somebody, because then it's not as insulting. With all due respect, sir, you should add a 6th reason, which is they don't know what they don't know. And this professor said to me, well, how do you know what you don't know? So as you start down the path and and you're not sure, that's what you don't know. That's why you surround yourself with people who are experts in their area. And you don't have to necessarily hire your first wave of people at that point in time, because they would always ask the students, who are your advisors? Well, my frat brother, my professor, my second cousin who ran a pizzeria because he has business experience. Right? Okay, well, if something's new is coming up and it's foreign to you, it's going to be foreign to them because they've never been there either. So why do that? Why not bring an organization together, like my organization, that does this, and we know people in all these areas, and we'll bring them in. We solve your issue, and then that guy goes away or that woman goes away. But if they need to come back, you're not starting from scratch again. Those are many of the secrets that we talk about in the book. And then there's also the issue with culture, like we talked about back when at the beginning of COVID. All these people are very unhappy. And now they realize, I don't have to go back to work there. There are so many jobs that are now open and available. Everyone's scrambling, right? So the culture, I interviewed Professor Edward Hess on my TV show, and he's a futurist. He's at the University of Virginia. And he said, Frank, two things are going to have to happen here. All right. The technology is changing so fast that it's going to determine not only what's going to work, but who's going to work. So businesses have to become more human centric. And I said, good term, human centric. Then he said, now I'm going to say a term, Frank, that's going to make everybody roll their eyes. They have to become more emotionally intelligent. And I said, yeah, you're right. That's going to make a lot of people roll their eyes. And he said, but let's put aside all the other stuff. Emotional intelligence is, he said, simply is an environment where people feel safe and they can say what they need to say, and they're not going to be shouted down, and nobody's going to pound their fist on their desk and tell them what a dumb idea that was. Okay. That's where the movement's going to have to go. And when that occurs, then he said, and the schools and the education, they have to catch up because the students are way ahead of it. So they're 14-year-olds with TikTok businesses. And when you're in the education side, they want to know, how is what you're teaching me applying in the real world? You know, I don't need the Pythagorean theorem. I mean, we all learned that. When did you ever use it? Never, right? So those are some of the points we try to get across in putting the book together. And I went to experts and people that I had interacted with, because, you know, I stepped on a lot of these landmines myself, and said, okay, how did we get through this? What do you suggest? Let's look at being present. And we also talk a great deal in the book, Tammy, about the connection between your professional life and your personal life, because you cannot totally separate them.
Right.
And I tried for years and I failed miserably, just miserably. Because if one side is bad, the other side's going to go down soon. So how do you deal with both ends of that spectrum? And corporate America, as you know, will take every ounce of time and blood that you will allow it to take. And I always tell people, that's the magic word. You allowed it. So if you set, here's what I'm going to put, this is what I'm going to give. I'm going to come and work at this time and work like hell till this time, then I'm going home. All right. Now, what COVID caused a big problem there, because you're already home.
Right.
And so now they think, well, you're not doing anything, you're home, so I'll send you an email at 2 a.m. and expect you to respond, right? And the laptop, this was Dr. Hess's point, he says, the laptop and the phone, worst two things that could possibly happen for employee relationships, because you work all day, all night, you come home when we were doing that, and you get on your laptop or you check your phone. Okay, something's coming. Okay, now you're not present at home. Okay. Not a good thing. Your children think you don't care. Your spouse thinks you absolutely don't care. And in my case, my spouse left because I just didn't pay enough attention to that side of the equation. And those are all a lot of the secrets. It's not just, it's not a theory book, and it's not the latest best practice book. This is real life people who went through real life things. And here's some real life answers.
Everything that you've been talking about are all, I mean, I became what I call self-employed back in 2009. And all of those feelings of being basically used for a low wage and being lied to by my employer, and always having these really good ideas about how to make things better, but they always wanted to do the top-down approach. And I kept looking around going, no, all of these people, I was in the newspaper business as an editor, and I'm going, no, all of these people working here on the copy desk, they know how to do it, the systems that needed to be in place, how to meet deadlines, how to make the newspaper more accurate. All of those people knew how to do it, but they weren't being allowed to do it because somebody up here had an idea about how it should work. And I remember feeling that way. And then on the personal side also, I purposely was a late adopter to the cell phone, because I knew that if I had a cell phone, that work would never let me um, go, because they would have me call, they would call me no matter where I was and no matter what time of the day or night. So I just kept saying, no, I don't want to get a cell phone, and I just waited because I knew that that big change was coming. And also the newspaper industry had a really tough time pivoting.
Yeah.
And they're still struggling. You can see it because the actual physical newspaper has just shrunk, shrunk, shrunk. And then they think the answer is to put everything behind a paywall. That's their answer. And that isn't the answer, especially when you're doing local reporting.
It's not going to work.
You, with this book, you say it's going to be part number one of three. What are the other two books about?
The second one, which is done, it's now in editing and in the publishing part, is Business and Personal Secrets for Avoiding Relationship Landmines. So this book one, dealt more with the business related type issues and touched on the personal. The other book goes on into, here's issues on the personal side, and then personal business landmines you have to watch. Also a section in there, like the office party, right? Remember the old office party? Major landmine. So many careers blew up in that world.
I avoided most parties. And that even was bad because people didn't understand. I was a single mom and I had 3 children at home. So I ran home as quick as I could because I had responsibilities and I couldn't go party with the other people. And I know that created some issues because people didn't know because I didn't tell them, that I had responsibilities that were way more important than whatever was going on, with the inter-office stuff.
Correct. And you get this mark put on you. You're not a team
Yeah.
player. You're not this, you're not that. We had the other thing about business, we said office politics.
Yeah.
I worked for a big corporate, and AT&T bought NCR at one point. So now I'm working for AT&T. Big. AT&T was like Fortune 2 at the time, right? Big operation. And you would watch all this internal jockeying, right? Remember what? I'm gonna attach my wagon to this individual because I think they're on the way up, and then they'll take me with me as they move, right? So what happens? That individual doesn't make it. Okay. And so you've put all your chips behind this person and it's not going anywhere. Or worse yet, they do make it and they don't bring you with them.
Right.
Right. And so there's all this internal jockeying that goes on in politics, and you have to be very careful about what you say to whom. The other big thing that I saw growing up was, and when I came up, is they would have these, they wanted you married, the corporate sector. They want you married and they want you in debt because you're easy to motivate. That's what I was told, right? So they would, as you're moving up the ladder, they would have these events and they wanted you to bring your spouse and sometimes your children, right? And I would tell people, I said, watch out, man, because you're walking into the lion's den here because they're looking to see how do you act, how do you dress, how does your spouse act? How do they dress? What are you drinking? How much are you drinking? Can you carry on a conversation that's worthwhile? Is your spouse going to be a drag on you going forward? And then they separate you and your spouse. And so you're over here with this group, while this other group is interrogating your spouse. And it was, and they said, no, they don't. And I said, yes, they do. That's what they're doing. Because if you're going to move up and you're going to become a vice president of a major corporation, they own you. Your life is done. You sold your soul, and they want to make sure that nothing's going to interfere with that. Okay, going back to a point you made earlier about innovation. One of the things I found, and I say all the time, is culture comes from the top down, but innovation comes from the bottom up. Okay, Starbucks, great example of this. Great example. Starbucks was just stomping everybody, right? But they were in the summertime, they had this big lull that occurred, all right, because nobody had blenders in the beginning. I used to be a CEO of 2 companies in Seattle, where Starbucks was over by Pike's Market. That was the first Starbucks. And on one corner was Tully's, which was a coffee shop, Starbucks in the middle of the block, Seattle's Best on the end of the block. 3 coffee shops, 1 city block, right? None of them had a blender because blenders break down. Blenders slow down the line. Blenders are unexpended cost. And then who dreamed in the 1980s that anyone would spend $5 or more for a coffee-related drink? Right? I grew up in New York. Coffee was 15 cents and refills were free. Okay, those days are gone. But Starbucks had an employee in Santa Monica, and they brought their own blender from home, and they started making blended drinks, frappuccinos and that type of thing. And they put it out where the people could come and try it, when you pay at Starbucks. And the people loved them, Tammy. They loved it. They kept asking for more, right? Now, Starbucks, to its credit, said, wow, we might be onto something here. And they changed the best practice, which is a term that drives me crazy. And they created the next practice, right? So people said, well, why didn't everybody do that? And this is because no one thought of it, because the top line, the best practice was, this is what you do. And this young person down here said, well, I'm going to try this. And it changed the world. Kodak, I grew up in Buffalo, New York. Eastman Kodak, a powerhouse in Rochester. It just ran Rochester, New York. Kodak engineer invented the digital camera in 1976, way before anybody knew what digital was. He invented it. But Kodak no, we sell film. That's our best practice, all right? By the time Kodak finally came to grips, it was too late.
Right.
Everybody else, now Kodak was home back in a few months ago, back in Rochester area, and they're knocking down all these Kodak buildings. It's just, it's done, it's over. They still exist, but they'll never be what they were, ever.
Yeah, I remember when I was in the newspaper, and I used to take, I don't know, 15 rolls at 36 a week, and have to go through, process it all, and then choose the photos, and then somebody else had to make the prints, and it was a tough thing. And then when digital came up, oh my goodness, all of a sudden I could see my photos without having to take, photos. I could tell if it was a good photo, and I ended up only having to take a few versus hundreds to get to know that I got it. And you've been talking about a lot of interesting things, like, they're basically, I guess, success stories and failure stories, but people or businesses that are successful, how do they make it seem so easy? Because some of these successes, we don't know all of the stuff that went on. All of a sudden, it's that old overnight success that probably took, like you said, took you 35 years to learn what you learned. But how do these successful people make it seem so easy? And I always notice that someone who is successful, even when they fail, they're back. That, they can turn it on. If they were a millionaire and they lost it all, they can become a millionaire again.
That's right. That's right. I talk about this a lot, is whenever you watch the best of the best in anything, business, singing, dancing, and I don't care what it is, golf, they make it look so simple. Hence the name of the book. It's almost like they walk on water. Okay. They are walking on water. They found the secret to walking on water, which is realize what you don't know, surround yourself with people who are better than you are in their specific areas, set the vision, and then lead the people. Don't dictate to the people. Steve Jobs and one of the best quotes, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't know it for sure. Why would I hire intelligent, capable people and then tell them what to do or how to do it? I would tell them what to do, and then they would figure out how to do it. Those are the people who are successful. They understand their limitations. They're great listeners, number one, great listeners. And because they're great listeners, they're continually learning, because you learn way more when you listen than when you're up there flapping your jaws and talking and making these big presentations to the employees, and they know that you're full of crap, right? They just, this is not, that's a nice thing to put in the annual report, but it doesn't happen, right? So those organizations depend, and they build an infrastructure and a culture where people feel empowered. And I don't care what industry you're in. I have a section in the book about University of Washington volleyball team, women's volleyball. And I used to live in Seattle, and one of my closest friends became the head coach, and they were terrible. They were god awful, terrible. And it was a terrible culture. And I met with him and I said, we can turn this around. You coach the team and I'll work on the business side, put the business plan together, right? So we started putting this in place. So we presented to the boosters, and the boosters all go, what are you, nuts? This is not a corporation. These are 18 to 22-year-old women. You're never going to get them to buy into this. You're just wasting your time. And we said, yeah, well, it's our time. We're wasting, right? It's not your time. So we put this thing in place, and we started believing in and selecting, back to the selection, the right type of people. And at one point, the number one player in the nation out of high school wanted to come to Washington. So she came for the interview, right? And the visit, they call it, and met with the head coach and all that. And I was a booster, so I couldn't be in on the meeting. So I see my friend, Jim McLaughlin, head coach, afterwards, and I said, how'd it go? He said, I don't want her. I said, she's the best player in the nation. How can you not want her? She came in and said, University of Texas guaranteed me I would play this and start at this position. I would get so many swings in the volleyball match, and I would get this, and what are you going to give me? And so I'm going to give you an opportunity to play. And that's all you're going to get, right? So do you pick what fits your culture? Is it that hunger and that ability to learn and the want to get better? University of Washington, which was god-awful horrible, in 5 years went to the Final Four 3 times in a row and won the national title in a 5-year window. And this was an organization that my brother is has an association with Arizona State. And he says the best thing about the University of Washington in every sport is that in volleyball, because you play them twice, they're 2 wins. That's the best part about Washington. And this organization got nothing to do with business. It is not a business club, but the principles still apply. They're the same principles. Okay, you have the right leader. You have to have a mantra. This is why we do what we do. This is how we do it. You have to repeat it over and over and over. You got to constantly be raising the bar so that the people you hire next month or next year are better than the people you currently have in place now. Okay, so you're always raising the bar constantly. And the thing that drives me crazy, Tammy, is I see people come to me and they'll say, hey, Frank, I'm going to go out and hire this new staff. What do you think of this job description? Okay, and it's got, you have to know Word, you have to know Salesforce, you have to know. I'm saying, guys, can't you teach them this when they get here, the specifics? And you go, well, yeah, but it would be better if they knew it. I said, wouldn't it be better if they had characteristics like integrity, like persistence, like grit, like self-esteem, like collaboration, hire character, and teach the skill? That's another thing very successful organizations excel at, is in their profile, they're not looking for this specific skill set. They're looking for this particular character trait. Character traits are internal to you. Either have them or you don't, right? Everyone knows Simon Sinek, right? Simon Sinek, the author speaker. He had a thing where he met with the Navy SEALs, one of the best run organizations in the world. And he asked one of the SEALs, who makes it as a SEAL? He goes, well, I can't tell you who makes it. I can tell you who doesn't make it. Okay, who doesn't make it? He says, the all-American jock who never had to, athlete who never had to put out any effort because they were just so much better than everybody. Now they have to work. They don't make it. The real popular person who always delegated and took the credit, they don't make it. Okay. People, the big muscled guys who want to show off all their but they don't make it. And he says, who makes it? He says, people who make it are ones who care first and foremost about the organization. They care about each other, and they're going to do whatever it takes to help each other succeed, right? And so it's collaboration. It's belief in the mission. It's belief in what it is that we're doing. And they're enthused about it to the point where they will do whatever it takes to help each other, not just to help themselves. They help each other, okay? And that's a big differentiator between really, really high-class organizations and ones that just kind of flounder. And it's so hard to keep long-term. And Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great, a few years later, he wrote a book, How the Mighty Fall, or How the Mighty Have Fallen, or something along those lines. And a lot of the people from Good to Great did not make it many, many years later because they lost that sense of camaraderie and that sense of collaboration and that sense of community, that we're all in this together and we're all going to do what needs to be done. And that's what made them great. And when you lost that, General Electric, they were like the powerhouse company. They're basically, they're not a whole lot there anymore. AT&T, who I worked for, is gone. Now it's AT&T, but it's all the regional Bell companies started by Southwestern Bell out of Texas, who bought them all back together, and then wanted the AT&T name because it was a better name than Southwest Bell, right? These organizations that are just gone. They're just gone. Blockbuster, gone, right? Sun Microsystem was one of the screaming champions. And a lot of these things come down to, they held on to what they said was, like you said before, here's the best practice. This is what we do. This is how we do what we do. Don't talk to me about anything new. We got this figured out. They don't pay you to think. You ever hear that one?
Yeah.
We don't pay you to think. Okay. Well, those people with that kind of an attitude miss the boat, right? Western Electric, way back when, before the phone company was deregulated, the only place you would get a phone was from Western Electric, right? And you couldn't buy the phone, you had to rent it. You had to rent it forever. They gave you a couple choices in color. The color was black. And they give you choices in style. It could be on the wall or it could be on your desk. That's it. Maximum manufacturing efficiency. Can't get any better than that. Deregulation comes. People don't want black phones. They want princess phones and Mickey Mouse phones and red phones. Western Electric stayed best practice. They didn't change. They're Western Electric anymore. They're gone. So many organizations take that best practice and they think it's gospel. It's not. It's a point in time. And then the people, the movers and the shakers, are these disruptive organizations, the ones who say, what if? I hear what you're saying, but what if we did this? What would the impact be? And so we moved, and you start getting a term, Professor Bennett, Bill Bennett from Stanford, wrote in his book, Design Your Life. And in that design, he says, you got to think like a designer. You try it, but you fail fast. Let's try it. Okay, it's not going to work. But it's not a failure. That was a big thing that I saw in corporate America. You probably saw it too. You were afraid to take a chance or afraid to go off the beaten path because if it was wrong, then your professional life was basically over, right? And now the good organizations, it's not that way. Let's try it and see what happens. And if we have to adjust, we'll adjust.
Yes, I lucked out near the end of my newspaper career I had ideas and they actually had me implement them. And what was interesting about that is how unhappy people were when it was successful.
Exactly.
Did prove what we did is we decentralized our printing operations so that every little newspaper office had control, final control over their piece of the paper.
Mhm.
And they before it was all sent to one central location, and I separated it out so that we could control it. And it actually, we were able to meet our deadlines earlier. People could go home, at 5 o'clock instead of at 11 o'clock because we just, made it better and simpler to do. But yeah, everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. And especially when you start to look at, we're definitely pivoting, I guess the catchphrase, but we are changing. And when you were talking about humanistic and about emotional intelligence, a lot of people are learning what that really does mean. And, also looking at creating businesses for themselves when before people felt like they had to go work for someone. And now I think everything's opening up so people can see, oh, there are opportunities that I don't have to work for someone else in order to survive or make a living. So I wanted to ask you,
Sure.
where can people contact you? I know you speak. I know that you have your shows, and I know that you have the book. So how can people reach out?
Well, you can get me on LinkedIn, which is easy. Just Frank Zakari. That's probably the easiest way. I have a website, which is just frankzakari.com. Send me an email at frankzakari@gmail. Keep it all simple, and be happy to talk to people and share insights. One of the things we put in the book, Tammy, is a workbook. So at the end of each chapter, there's questions to ponder, and then we extended it even further and said, at the end of the book, here's chapter 1, and here's workbook questions. So if an organization wants to say, hey, let's use this for internal training, and let's get dialogue going, because the biggest thing is people, you have to have dialogue, not communication. Communication is just noise, right? And discussion is I'm trying to convince you that I'm right and you're not. Dialogue is let's understand each other. All right. We don't have to agree, but let's at least understand why you think the way you think or why you feel this way. And maybe part of what it is you come up with will make more sense. The United States, or the whole world, has changed radically, right? There's so much more diversity in different races and colors and creeds and religions and everything. And if you're going to succeed, you damn well better understand that, and you better address it.
That makes a lot of sense. And also, you're new to Be Connected, but if you make your profile up, and people can connect to you on Be Connected and actually connect with you on all kinds of ways, Zoom, WhatsApp, email. And so I would highly recommend that too. And I know that you're going to be a sought after guest for other shows on Be Connected, because you have a lot of really interesting concepts. And as you were talking, there's so many different directions that we could go in discussing the walking on water part. I just think that's so interesting. And then the new book, does that have a title?
It's, I think where the final title is going to be Business and Professional Secrets for Avoiding Relationship Landmines. A little long, but I left it up to the publisher.
When you say relationship landmines, of course, in my mind, I go,
That's right. Everything explodes. We have one of the things that we're doing, one of my partners and I, we decided we're at a point in our life where it's time to do something of value for the world. And we're in the process of taking over a brain entrainment company where they use vibrations and to change the neural pathways in your brain to deal with stress and upset. And we're going to create a series of self-care wellness clinics. And the idea there is, and this is a COVID. Now, COVID was the tipping point. It's always been an issue, but COVID was the tipping point because so many people are frustrated and they have anxiety and they're distressed and they don't, and our medical system is just, our healthcare system is just not very good.
Right.
And so folks are saying, now it's time to take better control of my own life. And we even have MD doctors who have come to us and said, we want to be part of this because this giving somebody a pill and then 6 months later, well, that pill didn't work. Let's try this pill and let's try this combination. One of the MDs, Dr. Drew Factor, he's a pretty amazing guy. He's in Sacramento, California. He said to me, Frank, as I continue to deal with people, what I've discovered is the underlying cause of all these chronic illnesses that people with diabetes and not carpal tunnel, the fibromyalgia and diabetes and all these things. It's a stress-based illness. It's stress and trauma. And the trauma could be from childhood. And that's what we need to address as opposed to just giving them drugs. So that's exciting. That's something that's going to be coming, and we'll see where that goes.
Well, so I'll go ahead and I'll just invite you now to come back for another episode where we do talk more about that program and the brain, because I think you're absolutely right, whoever that was who said that, because if you look at diabetes and fibromyalgia and all of these things that are kind of, we really don't know, but for example, I know I started exercising about 3 months ago, and I'm up to 4 days a week, an hour a day doing strength and cardio. And the first two things I noticed was my lower back quit hurting and my pain level went down in like my joints and my hands and my body. Mm-hmm. So, and I started to sleep better. And so right there, because of the movement and the exercise, and also I think my attitude improved but the pain level, because when you say fibromyalgia, that's basically unexplained pain in several parts of your body. And a lot of that, I think it's you're like, if you're working in front of a computer, you're all tensed up and you don't get up enough. And with COVID, for example, people, maybe they were getting up and going places and all of a sudden now they literally are, you get out of your bed and walk to the computer and then you're stiff all day sitting there, and then you're dealing with people over Zoom and online, and it is very stressful. So I think that's a really good topic. So before I let you go, Frank, do you have any last comments you'd like to offer?
Well, thank you first and foremost for allowing me to be on the show and to talk to the people. I'm excited as Be Connect. I just heard about when you sent me a note. I didn't even know it existed, and I'm very, very excited. And what I see, and the biggest thing that with all the nonsense that's going on in the world, and someone asked me, well, geez, Frank, how do you maintain your attitude? And I said, well, because I'm never going to give up. I'm never going to lose hope, because every single day I see ordinary people doing extraordinary acts of kindness. And I see it more and more. And the change that we all want to come is coming. It's not coming fast enough, but it is coming. And I think we're going to see, at least I hope we're going to see, I know we're going to see, we're going to go from a we back to a we mindset instead of a me concept. And I see it coming. I think Be Connect is going to be a big part of that.
Good. Well, I agree, and it is a new platform, but it certainly is getting off to a good start. So everyone, let's thank Frank Zakari for being on Expert Profiles. And again, I show up with conversations with influencers and innovators. And of course, this was a phenomenal conversation. And go look for Frank's book, and I'll make sure that I put the links in with the show notes on this so that, it'll be a click away. So thank you so much, Frank. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Anytime.
Everyone, this is Dr. Reverend Tammy Patzer. Go make it a beautiful day.